Our next guest brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, now open for the 2024 season and playing to rave early season reviews. Tee times for any time during 2024 can be booked online now, and if you have a group of 12 or more, you, the organizer, plays for free. Tell us more about your group, and to book online, visit whistlergolf.com. Well, it's golf season now in the Lower Mainland, and it's golf season in Southern Ontario. Has been for a couple of weeks, where John Shannon joins us from the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada and the co-host of the Bob McCown podcast. How we doing, John?
Doing great, and you're right. It is golf season, getting ready for the RBC Canadian Open next week. Not too far from my home in Hamilton.
And you guys have Taylor Pendrith on, do you?
Taylor Pendrith today, yeah. Just he took the week off, and pretty good talker for a golfer. Golfers aren't the greatest talkers at times, but he was really good.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the last 2 years at the RBC Canadian Open, there have been absolute bombshells dropped in the ongoing Live PGA Tour feud. So we'll see if it goes off
something about being on neutral territory.
Yeah, or whether or not we hear more from both sides in that great divide. John, let's get to the Canucks and Oilers here. Just your overall thoughts, general thoughts on how the series went to bed.
Well, I think it unfolded as most people thought it would. It was going to be a long series. It was going to be a 7-game series, and it was going to be close. What the Canucks did to me was pretty impressive. I don't think there's a more emotionally charged hockey club in the National Hockey League right now. When they get on a roll, they get on a roll. And all they need is one simple little break. And Ryan McLeod gave them that break in the third period in Game 7, and they almost took advantage of it. It puts everybody in good stead. I know that people in British Columbia are disappointed that the Canucks aren't advancing. But I'll tell you what, if you're going to get eliminated this way, because it wasn't for the lack of trying.
Yeah. We're asking on our poll question today, was a rivalry born? We had talked, John, that really only 2 playoff series between these clubs. You got to go way, way back to find the most recent one. And every time the Oilers have been good, the Canucks have been bad, and vice versa. So maybe for the first time, asking you, rivalry born here?
I'm not sure yet. If they only meet in the playoffs once every 3 or 4 years, then the answer is probably no. This was a Canuck team that dominated the regular season between these two clubs, and for the Oilers to come back and win the series, that was something I think even with Connor mentioning it in his post-game interview that it wasn't too long ago that they were here losing 8-1, and that was the conversation. I'm going to put the rivalry on hold for now. I think there are going to be bigger rivals. I think Calgary is still a bigger rival with all the times they've played in the playoffs. And believe it or not, I still think Boston's a bigger rival based on, ancient history of 14 years ago. So we all want the rivalry. We all want the divisional setup to work. Edmonton, Vancouver would be a great rivalry if they can continue it. But there's no guarantee of that. So I'm on hold when it comes to this being a good rivalry.
And there's no doubt about it. You hit the nail in terms of who, if we asked that question on March 15th, who people would have said is the biggest rivalry. And really at that point, I don't know that people would have said there was any burning rivalry, but if you had to, it probably would have been Calgary. Right. One more meeting would probably seal it. And with the current playoff format, you could see it as long as the Canucks can figure out a way to be okay next year again. And there are an awful lot of questions. So built into the poll question is really another little question of, do you think the Canucks are going to be available in the playoffs to face the Oilers next season?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing for me that, and Rick Tocchet did mention this after the game, is that there's pride back in this jersey, pride back in the logo. I think that the foundation that Allvin and Rutherford and Tocchet have built is there for the long haul in so many ways. The fascination for me is, and I think that this is something that other Canadian cities, particularly the one I'm living in, marvel at, is that they were able to do it so quickly. You know, the two of you were just as skeptical as anybody else when Rutherford showed up, and you know, they went through the Boudreau era, and they weren't supposed to do this year at all.
No.
They were going to be on the cusp of making the playoffs, and I think that what this group has done and what the players have done is reinstill this team being a playoff contender every year.
Now, Jim Rutherford leaned into some of his reputational tropes, if you will, acting early, you know, making a splash at the trade deadline, you know, or thereabouts, not on the deadline day per se, but thereabouts. The other one that people are saying now going into this offseason is they'll make a splash. They'll be busy. They're going to zig when you think they're going to zag. They can't stand pat. There's too many changes, too many UFAs and RFAs for standing pat to be an option. So should Canucks fans buckle up for the summer, do you think?
Well, I think the two questions when you talk that way, Blake, is what's going to happen with Elias Lindholm? What's going to happen with Nikita Zadorov? I mean, those are the two.
But those are attached, John, to other questions, and where you get that room. Are those questions attached to Ilya Mikheyev's future and a couple of other guys that, you know, may need to be traded or bought out?
No, that's fair. But in the end, when I'm talking about going to camp in September, you know, Zadorov has to be on this team in September. He has to be on this team. Of any of the free agents or the UFAs or even the RFAs that played in the playoffs, he made the biggest impression. I did not think he was as good as he played in this playoff series or the whole playoffs. And you're going, wow, this guy is a stud. They have to find a way to get him signed. And I do think, you know, the challenge of the RFA and Hronek being signed as well. Now they have him for one more year at least if they want. But those two guys become such cornerstones to the future of this hockey club that those are the two that I'm watching more than anything else.
Young Sheloves, do you suspect he will be the backup goaltender next year and that the Canucks will go forward with him and Demko?
Casey DeSmith found an inopportune time to be hurt. That's unfortunate. You know, he you know, for the regular season, he did yeoman's work, did better than everybody expected. You know, within the Nashville series, nobody thought he would get hurt. He got hurt. And, you know, he got Wally pipped, Matt. He got Wally pipped. And, you know, and you couldn't help but love what Sheloves did on so many different levels. And he's going to be affordable. And so, yeah, I mean, this is Demko Sheloves now for the next few seasons.
Mm-hmm. Mikheyev, John, there's some buyout talk, a word or two about what you saw from him in the playoffs and where you think the future goes for that player with the Canucks.
Fisher cut bait, I guess. I think that's what everybody's talking about. You have to marvel still at his speed, but you know, where the hands have gone is another story. Where they have gone now, were they great to begin with? No, they weren't great to begin with. There still will be somebody out there, I suspect, that thinks that Mikheyev has some value. And so before you even worry about thinking about the buyout window, is there a chance that you can move him, even if you have to take some of the salary? When he was not in the lineup, they didn't miss him. When he was in the lineup, he missed the net. And so that's you know what Rutherford and Allvin will have to decide is whether the sample size of him being so inept offensively is something that they can move on from and try to find a way to save some of the money.
Suspect that as we're recording this, it has not been announced yet, but suspect that Rick Tocchet will win the Jack Adams Award as the league's top choice. We're wondering whether it's going to be unanimous as the league's top coach. We're wondering whether he'll be the unanimous choice for the award, John. And, you know,
there's always one broadcaster that'll screw it up. You know that.
Damn broadcasters.
He talked after the game about the connectivity of the organization and that they finally have that this year. And it's true. You know, they didn't have that even last year with Bruce. What do you think is possible now that the Canucks are finally a connected organization, ownership, management, coaching staff, players?
It's amazing what happens when everybody's pulling in the same direction, isn't it? It really is. And you know, for Rutherford to have the ultimate control, for him to give some of that to Allvin, and for Rick Tocchet's no-nonsense approach to be effective, I think speaks volumes of what this organization can be. I think this will be, in the next 4 or 5 years, a perennial 100-point team. And then the question becomes, are they going to be healthy enough? And unfortunately, that's the question. Are they going to be healthy enough to make a dent in the playoffs? You know, there's going to be lots of people as the summer goes on going to say, wow, how much different would this have been if Thatcher Demko had been in goal? You know, not a knock at Shelovs. He did great work. But Thatcher Demko might have stopped that Evan Bouchard overtime goal. You know, there were some opportunities that the Oilers had because of Shelov's inexperience. You know, the CC goal. I mean, does Demko stop that? So to me, this is all about making sure that players that are star players for this team stay healthy. And Thatcher Demko is at the top of that list.
There's not a bounty of free agents. I mean, it's there, but it's not like everybody gets to go to town with the cap going up, you know, as significant as it has in the last half decade. Does it get silly in free agency, do you think? And does that hamper the ability of the Vancouver Canucks to back up last season to this?
I don't know if it gets silly because a lot of people have already spent that money.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the Canucks have spent that money already on the Pettersson deal. Yeah. You know, what's going to happen here with the Nylander deal has spent that money here as well. I would, to me, you wonder with everything that's going on, is this the summer of trades rather than free agency? Is this the summer where there are people jockeying their money in order to try to, you know, keep certain people in their organization happy? I mean, I for the life of me, other than Barry Trotz being a nice guy, I still don't understand the McDonough trade to back to Tampa financially for the Lightning. You know, they have guys to sign. They need to sign some guys. And Ryan McDonough is almost $7 million on the cap for them without Nashville taking any dollars back. So I think that we're probably going to see, rather than free agency being a difference, and perhaps free agency is part of it, I think we're going to see more trades as people try to make sure that they have cash to be used. And obviously guys like Mitch Marner would be at the top of that list.
Yeah, we've wondered about busy off seasons, lots of trades in the past, but it has been the stuck salary cap that hasn't been able to really see that come to fruition. I mean, it just looks flatly like the Lightning are now going to walk away from Stamkos, John.
I don't think so. I still think that they're going to try to find a way to make it work. It doesn't make any sense. It's just, you know, Stamkos still wants to be there. I still think he has value to that hockey club. I'm old-fashioned, Matt. I do think you pay for loyalty. And I think that there's been loyalty both ways. And I think Julien Brisebois is smart enough to know that. And I think that Steven Stamkos and his people at Newport Sports are smart enough to know that too.
Yeah. If you're thinking trades this summer, does that include UC Saros and Jacob Markstrom, the two big goaltenders who were either on the market or rumored to be on the market this year?
Yes. Saros for sure, because they have Iskarov in Milwaukee that's supposed to, you know, when you can have a controllable dollar figure for an entry-level guy for 3 years, that makes life a little more tangible. And Saros going into the last year of his deal, I think that that's something you have to consider. the Markstrom one's an interesting one for me. And if I'm Craig Conroy, I'm having my meetings with my scouts and with my coaching staff saying, is Dustin Wolf good enough? And if they believe that Dustin Wolf is good enough, then the answer is yes. If they think he's not there yet, then the answer is no, because you still need you need a goaltender. You need somebody to stop the puck. And Dustin Wolf, to me, has not really proven that he's an NHL goalie just yet. Lots of potential, but it's taken a lot longer for Wolf to get to the NHL level, particularly with his size as a factor. So to me, the Markstrom deal really is reliant on the fact that they think Dustin Wolf can play that position for Calgary.
While we're talking about former Canucks of that era, a lot of Canuck fans, I think, in their own minds, have just put Christopher Tanev on the roster for next season, except he's amongst the best defensemen in the NHL right now in these playoffs in terms of holding down the superstars. What do you pay Chris Tanev, oft injured, now 34 years old? I mean, he's going to be 35 before Christmas of next year. Can you afford to give him any raise on a $4.5 million contract for a 35-year-old defenseman? Should the Canucks pursue a right shot defenseman of Chris Tanev?
Well, if the Canucks do, just get in line.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's going to be at least 5 or 6 teams that decide that Chris Tanev is what they need. And somebody will be silly enough to give him not the 2 or 3 year deal, but the 4-year deal. So that's going to be the challenge. Who is anybody going to be in that silly summer signing season? Be prepared to give Tanev that kind of term. I think the money's probably where it was and where it always is. To me, the thing with Tanev is, what will the term be? Brad Treliving, has a relationship with Chris as well. The Maple Leafs are in need of somebody. And the other aspect is that Dallas is a pretty good place to play too, and no state tax. So
right.
There's that huge advantage of the difference between 37% and 51 or 52%. That teams like Dallas and Nashville and Tampa and Florida and Seattle and Utah, I guess, they can actually put into play. So it's going to be a tough road to hoe for any team in Canada to try to compete with those teams from a salary base. So to me, I'd be shocked if Chris Tanev ends up anywhere other than Dallas or Toronto.
And of course, 2 of the Final 4 are non-state income tax jurisdictions. Have we had this conversation before, Shannon, about the league and maybe having a look at this, because it's turning into quite a competitive advantage?
We probably have, and it usually comes up in the last week of June and the first week of July when these types of events occur. But then there are lots of people that would say, yeah, the advantage is such, but when you look at how many teams in the top 10 revenue generating teams are still in our country, they have more money to spend in many ways, even though there is a cap. So from that perspective, it's, there are opportunities around the cap that Canadian teams can pay, whether it be, facilities, which by the way, has become the biggest selling point that Edmonton has been able to use in the last little while in signing free agents.
Yeah.
They get treated like royalty. The practice facility, and we haven't heard much about the practice facility in Vancouver for a couple of months. The practice facility and the amenities in Rogers Place make it a sellable point to a player that looks at dollars and looks at access and looks at, security for his family and everything about it. It's the non-tangible stuff the team and the players are looking at, because in many ways the money ends up being rather equal anywhere you go.
It ends up being enough.
Wow.
Not equal.
Yeah,
but
I mean, they have all the amenities, but they're still bringing Russian free agents to Joey's, for heaven's sakes, with Kuzmenko a couple of summers ago.
They didn't need to take Zach Hyman to Joey's. And by the way, Matthias Ekholm loves playing in Edmonton, so they've done a good job there in doing it.
No, they have. Of course, there was that one summer where every winger they signed was playing with McDavid, right? Lucic and
all promises, yeah.
Yeah. Lastly, John, Final Four here. Who do you like to emerge as the West and East champion?
I tell you, this is hard. I can see both series going 7. I can see Florida grinding it out. I just, when you look at what they do and how they play, and call it the Sam Bennett effect. The Sam Bennett's going to be a factor at some point. He's going to be the most hated man in New York City. And Edmonton, Dallas, to me, it's comparable to what we saw in the Vancouver series. They both have strengths. Tanev and Heiskanen are going to be all over McDavid and Draisaitl. The Oilers have the 2 best players, but the Dallas Stars are deeper.
Dallas is like a better version of the Canucks, so I do like the chances.
And they still have their number 1 goalie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, not a knock at Shelovs, but
no, it's true.
If Jake Ottinger's dialed in and they're going Jake Ottinger versus Stu Skinner, I don't know how you can't pick Dallas.
I'm with you, John, on Dallas. Marvelous stuff, my friend. Thank you for this. We will catch up next week.
Have a good week, boys.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.